Hi there! I hope you all are doing well and have sort of gotten your head around the French rules and patterns of the three vowels A, E, and I that we covered in the last video. The good news is that the hard part is done. Really, A and E are the more complex vowels in French. In this video, we'll finish out the vowel rules in French by looking at O, U, and a few other vowel patterns. And just as we did in the last video, we will look at all vowel sounds of a certain vowel, including the long sound, the short sound, and any other diacritic or pronunciation mark involving that vowel. So with that being said, let's start with the vowel O. The vowel O. So let me write out O. O. Now, thankfully for us, O isn't that complex either, so should be good for us. So the first sound we're going to look at when we're talking about O is the long sound. The long sound is O with a line over it. Is this O with a line over it? And this is pronounced O. It just has its own name, O. So let's look at some rules regarding the long O sound in French. First of all, in the middle of a word, it's going to be an O. Most of the time. Pretty simple. It's going to be an O. At the end, it could be an OS or OT because we know that it's probably not going to be an O at the end. You know, if it has an O and the letter O and it's at the end of the word, it's probably not going to be there alone. There's probably going to be a silent letter, right after it. So at the end, if there is an O at the end, it could be an OS or OT. And there's a lot of words ending in OT, I would say, rather than OS. But then again, you can, never really be sure which one. So it's best to learn both of them. So this is one viable option, just O. Another thing is that at the end of a word, there's a high chance that it could be an EAU. This is a very common French ending. You've probably heard it in a couple common words, as in plateau or bureau, but EAU, very common. And if it's at the end and it's a plural, if plural, it's gonna be EAUX. And most cases, this is gonna be pronounced O as well, but it can also be pronounced O's. So if you ask for an alternate pronunciation, or even if you ask for the part of speech, if it's plural or singular, you can easily tell if there's an X or not. But EAU is a very common thing at the ends of French words, so it's definitely in. Another thing also, AU at the beginning or middle, not really at the end. At the end, it's either going to be EAU or OS and OT most of the time. So it's really down to those three, and it's going to be EAU most of the time. In the middle, it's going to be an O or an AU, and I would suggest going with an O if you have no idea at all, because that's more likely. And at the beginning, it can be an AU most of the time. So we're going to look at some example words. Switch the color up here so we can look at example words. In the middle, it's going to be an O, as in risol. Risol. Just a simple, O. There's a lot of words where it's just an O, in the middle. Volant, volage, volage. Croquet is another one. That's a good one. Croquet. Croquet. Just a normal O, really. There's a lot of consonants surrounding this, so it's not like a tricky vowel sound, just a simple O. At the end, it could be an OS, OT. OS, I'm thinking apropos is a word, apropos. Apropos. OT at the end, there's quite a bit. Bibelot, there's Jacqueminot, Chassepeau. I'm going to put Jacqueminot down. Jacqueminot. It's a fancy word. But yeah, OT is definitely more common than OS, if it's down to these two. So at the end, it's going to be OS or OT. In the middle, O, if it's just in the middle of the word. See, these are not at the ends. There's other consonant sounds right after. So it's not the last one, so you don't have to worry about OS or OT. But if it's at the end, as in apropos or Jacqueminot, you have to give some thought as to if there's an S or T at the end. If it's not an O at all, it can be EAU, and we've covered some words. Plateau is another one, plateau. Bureau, I think I said. Definitely jambeau. I'm just going to say with plateau here. If plural, EAUX, that's also a thing. Ciseaux is an example I can think of within EAUX. Ciseaux. Also, it could be a U at the beginning or the middle. At the beginning, I'm thinking obad. Mostly it's going to be at the beginning, obad. AU is pretty viable for the beginning. There aren't that many French words that really start with O. I mean, there's a couple, aubergine, other ones I can think of, aubin. There's a lot, but it's going to be in the middle most of the time. A couple times, it's going to be at the beginning most of the time. A couple times in the middle, as in saucisson. But most of the time it's going to be at the beginning. And here even an O could work, but somehow I just feel an AU looks right. And sometimes maybe if after you spend a lot of times with the words, you'll probably like sort of get a feel for if it should be AU or O. But pretty simple here. For the end, EAU is definitely a good option. Otherwise, OS and OT. Middle, usually O, and beginning, usually AU. So that's basically the long O sound in French, the long O sound. So let's get rid of this. We can move on to another sound involving the long O. But it's a little different. The sound is long O with the N, the little nasal mark. So this is pronounced and very, very thankful because this has only really one spelling. It's gonna be O-N. And that's it. Yay, smiley face. It's going to be at the ends of words most of the time. It can also be in the middle. Thinking at the beginning, not so much, but definitely at the end most of the time. So at end most of the time. Also in the middle. Beginning, no, not really. But definitely at the end most of the time. But there's a bunch of words I can think of that have O-N in it. Definitely garçon. I could write them all over this screen here because there's so many. There's floraison. Just do a couple more. There's really a lot, so let me try and think of one with it in the middle. Chapon, brouillon, there's so many. Malmaison, demi-mondaine's one in the middle here. Demi-mondaine. Remember we talked about this monde in French means world, but here's another example with an O-N at the end. Livraison, one more, I'm just going to write it here. Livraison. Got that O-N. Very, very common. If you ever get this, really don't think about it. It's going to be O-N most of the time. And that's very good for us. So that concludes long O. And now we can move on to short O, which is really not a simple O. It's the O with the one dot on top. Pretty sure we've talked about this. Looks like this, O with one dot. And if you remember in the How to Read the Dictionary video, I said this is sort of the equivalent of how you pronounce the A in law. It's a little different than this. Usually people can't tell at the beginning this is ah and this is aw. Very, very slight difference. Ah, aw. You know, it's a slight difference, but this is just like law. So it kind of is like a short O because you've got the aw sound. And our rule for this is that it's going to be an O most of the time. O, in quotes, O most of the time. O most of the time. It's rarely a U, rarely a U. And an example I can think with a U is Goffret. But other than that, really, I think it's going to be an O most of the time. This is a sort of common sound in French, not really, but lorgnette is an example. Lorgnette. This O can also appear at the beginnings of words, for sure, like oriflamme, oriflamme. So there's a lot of words where it starts out at the beginning, or it can be in the middle, so it's going to be an O most of the time, rarely a U. Usually a U will be like an ow sound or aw, but in this case, not too much. There's a couple words, so it'd be best for you to learn those, and then you could eliminate that for, except those words having a U, and then the rest of them would be an O. Okay, that concludes O for us. And we're going to move on to U. Move on to U. Okay, so U is not that, complex, so that's good for us too. U. Okay, the first sound, U, is going to be the U with two dots. The famous sound, U with two dots. Let me get my color. Okay, U. Two dots. And this is pronounced ooh. Ooh. Okay, remember it's pronounced ooh. And one of the biggest French rules, write it right now, it's going to be OU most of the time. OU, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen OU in French words. It's one of the most common spellings in French, OU representing the oo sound. So most of the time it's going to be OU, and there's so many words with that, and we'll look at them. An example I can think of is frou-frou. It's got it twice. Frou-frou. There's so many. There's a lot of words with OU in French. There's tourlerou, got it twice. Tourlerou. Or no, got it 3 times actually. Actually, it's pronounced tourlerou. Oh, sorry. Pronounced tourlerou, but let me get my color back. Okay, there we go. Tourlerou. So I'm not sure this really counts because it's not really an oo sound, but it's there 3 times. Another one, bouffon is another one. Bouffon. There's a lot. This is just to show that it happens a lot. Okay, so definitely OU most of the time. It could also be a U. Also a U in the middle. In middle. Okay. Rarely OUP, as in coup. It's going to happen at the end of the word coup. Rarely a OUP or OUX, as in rue. So, but they also have the OU, but rarely it's going to end like that. A couple words, so we should look them up. Another thing is IEU also, in the middle or the end. In middle or end, IEU. IEU. It's not so common. At the end it is, as in Perlu, or the middle, lieutenant. So it happens, there's a couple of words where it does happen. So at the end it's more common. Perlu, lu is one. Lieutenant is one in the middle where that happens. So IEU is a good choice in the middle. Bonduserie is another one I can think of. But it's going to be OU most of the time, representing this oo sound. It could be a U in the middle, and I'm trying to think of a word. Prunelle is one. Prunelle. Okay, there's one. Luminaire is another one. You know, lumen has the root from Latin meaning light, so, you know, that's maybe why it doesn't have an OU. So if you know certain roots, you know, use the letter that you know it's in it. Like here it's just a U. So it could be a U in the middle, most of the time OU, rarely OUP or OUX at the end. You should look at words that have that. In the middle or NIEU is a pretty good choice. There's a couple words with that. Not too few and not too many. So that's definitely an option. So that's all we've got for a U with two dots pronounced oo. Okay. Moving on to the next U sound. It's the U with one dot, not two, but one dot. And this is pronounced as in book or took. Not oo, but rather It's kind of hard to say when it's not in a word, but it's pronounced U with one dot, as in book or took. If the word ends in URE, which is one of the stems we learned, if ends in URE, most of the time this sound is so it automatically has this spelling, is so it automatically has the sound in it. It's obviously going to be a U. And demiurge is one of the words, I think I talked about having that. Demiurge, let me move, demiurge. Okay, is an example of that. Otherwise, OU. So usually the U is going to be at the end of the word if it's in URE. Otherwise, go with OU. Again, this is a very common spelling for that. Pourboire is one. Pourboire. Here you've got it at the beginning. Pourboire. Tournure. Here's a perfect example of both, actually. Tournure here, and the U here because it ends in URE. So this could be up here too. Tournure. Got that sound twice. And you can see this is like the perfect example word role model here for this sound. Otherwise, OU if it's not URE at the end, so in which case it's going to be a U. So that's it for a U with one dot. Okay, we're getting closer here. Now here's, we're going to look at a little fancy sound that really only happens in French, not so much in other languages. And this sound is, here, let me write it out first, then we can see how to say it. It's more like a U and an E squished together with a line over it, and it's like you have to like curve your mouth in like a weird way to pronounce it. It's not exactly oo or it's like and you know, I've been taking French and it took me like 3-4 years to get that sound down. It's and you will see them in words sometimes. You know, the words have retained this pure, you know, French pronunciation. Most of the time it's going to end in U. So mostly a U. As in tendu. And this is going to happen at the ends of words most of the time. Tendu. Impromptu, like that. That's where you're going to see it most, at the end. Tendu, battu. Battu is another one. Battu. You can hear it's a little, it's not a really common sound in English, so it's a little different, the pronunciation. Sometimes it can be UE. Sometimes UE. If it ever is really at the end, it's usually in words with like VUE at the end. Example is bévu, Bévue. And here it's UE because the vue in French means sight or view. So that's like a stem or a root in there. So it has to be UE. So there's a couple of words where it ends in UE. Tenue is another one. But most of the time, it's going to be just a U at the end. And if it's in the middle of a word, it's still going to be a U most of the time, like bruyere, bruyere. So let me write that up here. Bruyere. Got that U. So most of the time it's going to be a U. So if you have no idea, I would suggest going with a U. Okay, final sound for U is U. It's not oo, it's the same sound with a Y in front of it. So it's a U, U. Let me get my color here. Okay, it's Y and U with 2 dots, and this is U, U. It's pretty easy to figure out. If it's in the middle, it's going to be a U. Again, most of the time. There are obviously a couple exceptions, but it's going to be a U most of the time. At the end, it could be, notice could be UE, just like the last example. Let's do example words. Okay, in the middle, U, as in punaise. That's a P. Punaise or cubeb. Keep it simple, just a U. It could be UE at the end, as in conspue or review. Conspue, review. So what I would say here is if it's in the middle of the word or at the beginning and you have no idea, you should go with the U no matter what. If it's at the end, think about it twice. It could be a UE, and I think most of the time it will. If it's just if it's just a U at the end, it's probably going to be pronounced as the example we saw earlier with the U and E squished together with the line over it, the U sound rather than the U sound. So if you hear U at the end, like avenue, it's going to be UE at the end most of the time, and if it's at the middle or beginning, the sound U is going to be spelled with just the letter U. And that concludes our letter U. Yay! Now we can move on to the other vowel sounds and rules I was talking about. Now really there isn't much left. The thing that's left is the schwa. And the schwa is definitely the sticky spot in most, if not all, languages. So let me just write down other vowels. Other vowels, and we're going to start out with the schwa. Now, schwa in French is just like the schwa in other languages. It can be spelled with A, E, I, O, or U. And don't you worry, we're going to come back to that in a second. But French has some of its own spellings for the schwa, in addition to A, E, I, O, and U. O, E, U is an additional spelling. O, E, U is a possible spelling, And it happens in words such as v. This is v. And oeuvre. Two examples where this happens. Definitely not that common. So this is a possible spelling, but this is one of those separate spellings that French has for schwas. Very, very rare. So you're not going to run into this a lot, but just keep in mind that this is a possibility. Also, EU in words ending in EUR. Remember that was one of the stems we talked about, meaning one who does, just like ER in English, but most words ending in EUR, entrepreneur, it's going to have the EU representing the schwa. So these two are sort of French ways to spell the schwa, not as common as our normal vowels, A, E, I, O, and U, but definitely something to look into. There could be a couple words that use these spellings as schwas. Now, going back to the vowels, let me erase this so we can go back to the vowels. The thing with French is really it could be anything, and the best advice I can give is to ask for the alternate pronunciation, because most of the time that can help you figure it out. But other than that, it could be equally, actually, could be A, E, I, O, or U. Everything we've talked about, all these vowels could be very, very good candidates for the schwa. Let me write down words that have, you know, certain words that have, use each one of these. A, galette, galette. Now here, the thing with this word, because you know it starts with a G, you couldn't use an E or an I. That would make it Gillette or Gillette, Gillette or Gillette. So that would make the G soft. So you're really only left with A, O, or U. If you use a U there, it wouldn't be galette. Really, it'd be goulette, following French rules. So that cuts off U. Really, you've got A and O left. Galette with O doesn't look quite right. Could be a possibility. If it was an O here, it would probably be pronounced golette. So really, that leaves you with A. So galette is an example of how to use process of elimination to figure out which vowel is used. Doesn't work all the time. Here it does work. Let's go to E. Profiterole. 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 Here it couldn't really be an A or a U. Doesn't look right for those. Could be an I or O in addition to the E. Again, this is one of the ones where you would have to figure it out. But if you kind of say it, profiterole, you can somewhat tell maybe it could be an E. It's one of those innate things again, and that's really hard to explain, but this is another example of why schwas are sort of difficult, because it could be so many things. But here it's an E. Example of I is salinelle. Salinelle. This is a tricky one. This could really be an A or an O, and it would be fine, really. Salinelle. Maybe it has something to do with salinity. Look into these kind of rules and roots. That will definitely help you if you recognize a certain root in a certain word. Then you can almost be sure. If you can maybe connect this to salinity or something of the like, you would be sure it's an I if you could tell from the definition or something. So that's another way to sort of tell. Example of a U, chalumeau. Or sorry, I'll do an example of an O first. Let me get rid of this. Let's go in order here. Example of an O, Bourbon. Bourbon. Here, right here. And an example of a U, chalumeau. Chalumeau. Sort of hard to tell in both cases, but again, it's one of those where you have to sort of know it and understand why it is. Remember to ask for those alternate pronunciations, because those really do help. Sometimes they give it away which one it is, because the vowel might be slightly stressed or accented differently, and that'll definitely help you. So with the schwas, really, I would just say try to eliminate as much as you can. Try to boil this down to less than 5, hopefully, and then maybe plug them in, see which one looks right, see if you recognize any roots, and then hopefully you'll end up picking the right one in French. And this is gonna sort of hold true in a lot of languages, like German or Spanish. And this advice does work most of the time, so hopefully you can use that and hopefully be able to choose the correct vowel in each instance. So that covers the schwa, and the final sound I'll cover, I promise, will not be this complex. It's the wa sound. Wa sound. Let me write it out. Wa. This is actually going to be W with A and 2 dots. This is wa, wa. And the really only way to spell it is OI. It's a big thing in French. OI really represents the wa sound. OISE is a very common common ending. Is a common ending. And there's a whole bunch of words using OI, which represent the wa sound in French. The wa sound. Really, it's going to be at the end. OISE is a common ending. OIR is a common ending. So you're going to see it at the ends for sure. You can also see it in the middle a lot, I promise. So if you hear wa in French, that should you should be like, oh, wow, that's gonna be an OI most of the time. Really, I can't think of exceptions. OI is pretty standard in French for that. And there's a bunch of words. I can, again, put up a lot. Mouchoir. Here's that OU we were talking about for the OO sound. Mouchoir. Got that OIR ending. Boudoir, devoir, polissoir. Like I said, OIR is very common. Niçoise is a common one. Niçoise has the OISE. Niçoise. Grimoire. Nigerois. Bourgeoise is probably another one you're familiar with. Bourgeoise. So you see the OISE and the OIR. Very common, but it's going to be there regardless. Étoile is an example. Étoile. It's got our accent. Étoile. And I'm sort of going all over the place to sort of highlight that there's a bunch of words with OI. A voiture, meaning car. Voiture. There's that URE we always talk about. And so on and so forth. There's a bunch of words in French that have OI representing the wa sound, and that's really the only way to represent the wa sound. So all of this finally concludes our French vowels, our rules and patterns of French vowels, A, E, I, O, and U, including these other vowels, the schwa and the wa sound. So with this, we have actually looked at the most important spelling rules in French and the most variable spelling rules in French. So that's very good for us. And in the next video, we're just going to finish up with some common French consonant rules, which are definitely not as complex as these vowel rules. So, like I said, the hard part is over. And in the next video, we'll finish it up with some consonants and take a look at those 10 words that we looked at the beginning. And hopefully now we can use all the information we've learned in this video and the previous videos to figure out why those 10 words are spelled the way they are. So this concludes vowels. Next video is consonants. I hope to see you then.